Hello, parents, guardians, and other interested adults. My name is Mr. Schuett, and I'm going to be your student's teacher this semester, or possibly this entire year. First, I'd just like to say thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to take part in our Back to School Night event, even though I know this is just a series of videos. I'm hoping at some point during the course of this year we'll get a chance to actually meet face-to-face, or at least mask-to-mask, potentially as soon as parent-teacher conferences this upcoming semester. So my goal for this video is threefold. First, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, my background, experience, and interests, just so you get a sense of who I'm going to be in the classroom for your student. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit about course expectations. Some of these have changed as we've gained experience with the online learning environment. And lastly, I want to take you on a quick tour of Schoology, our learning management system, so you can get a sense of how I structure things, where resources can be found, and lastly, get you an idea of how to get a hold of me in the event that becomes necessary. So let's get to it.
So first, let me tell you a little about myself. This is my 14th year teaching. I started my career outside of the city of Chicago, where I taught for 8 years, predominantly the physical sciences, mostly physics, but also a little bit of chemistry and physical science here and there. Over the last 4 years, I transitioned to Colorado. This is now my second year in the St. Vrain district. Last year, I was at Longmont High School, where I was their engineering teacher. And this year, I'm split between teaching college prep physics here and teaching this semester, at least, the Introduction to Engineering course and the Senior Design Capstone course. I'll also mention I live with my wife and 2 boys up outside of Nederland, so I do have a bit of a drive both in the morning and in the afternoon. And I only mention this if you're trying to get a hold of me shortly after the end of the school day. There's a decent chance that I'm going to be unavailable just because of that.
So the second thing I wanted to talk to you about is how some of our course policies are evolving in light of the demands and challenges of this remote learning environment. So let me start by talking specifically to college prep physics. First of all, I've somewhat relaxed the expectations of late work in our syllabus. We have said previously that if it is not turned in following when it has gone over in class, it is no longer eligible to be turned in. I am still accepting some of that work, however, it will be for a significant markdown. The second important policy that has been kind of driven by student demand is retakes. We have adopted a retake policy for college prep physics that is consistent with the math department, which is 1 time per semester, every student can retake 1 test. That retake must be done within the week following the return of that graded test, which again, in a remote environment will be very different. You won't be getting the test back to look at, but once that feedback has been given. If you choose to do that retake within that 1 week window, we will then average those 2 scores. So there is a potential that the retake could lower your score if you do worse on the retake than you did on the initial exam. And to be clear, the retake will be a new version of that test. It will not be the exact same questions. Now for the engineering classes, that means Intro to Engineering and or Senior Design, the majority of assessments in that class are not your typical paper quizzes and or sit down fill in the blank type tests. They're going to be highly project based and highly performance based in terms of what was the outcome of the project, what was the thing that you built, did you demonstrate any sort of accomplishments towards your defined achievement criteria for the goal. So in that case, the retake policy for physics doesn't really make a ton of sense. Should we need to change any of these policies at some point in light of sort of this changing remote learning environment, or once we go to hybrid, or once we get back to fully in person, that may have to happen, but I will make pains to make sure that is abundantly clear to students and to you as well.
One other thing that I really wanted to mention has to do with the impact that remote learning is having on my grading process and the time that it takes. Because I'm dependent on good Wi-Fi connection and third-party applications and other things beyond my control in order to get feedback to students, I'm finding it is incredibly time consuming. I'm estimating somewhere between 3 and 6 times as much of my week is spent grading as it has been in previous years. And I mention this just to communicate that I'm aware I'm not happy with how slow this process is either, but just to ask for some patience. I believe I'm about 2.5 weeks behind on grading at this point, and we've only been in school for 5 weeks. So I'm hoping that this trend doesn't continue and something can give along the way. But this also pertains to people with late work. If you find yourself in the unfortunate situation where perhaps your eligibility for athletics or something is impacted because of an assignment you didn't turn in, it's very time-consuming and difficult for me to get simply one example of one student's work graded in a timely fashion. So if you can help me out when it comes to late work, perhaps email me a copy of the work in addition to submitting it, for example, on Schoology. And anything that can help me streamline this process will help me get that feedback to you and your student more quickly. And I think that's something that we could all agree would be a great thing.
So the third thing I wanted to talk about is our Schoology learning management system. So if you take a look at this screen, this is my landing page. This is very different than what you'll see as a parent or a student, but I just wanted to point a couple things out. First of all, you can see the 3 classes I teach and when they do it. My A day, blocks 1, 2, and 3 are my college prep physics. My B day, I have intro to engineering first and last block 5 and block 8. And I have the senior survey or, the capstone class, senior design, block 6, so the second block on B days. Just to underscore what I just said about workflow, if you notice, I do have 404 ungraded assignment submissions at this point in time, and trust me, that is an interminable source of stress for me. But if we open one of these classes, this is what you will see. So I just tapped the physics, college prep physics 1 class, and this is the landing page. So when you get here, you'll notice these course materials. And I just kind of want to go through these one by one so you, the parent, guardian, or interested adult, kind of know where to find what your students are looking for. So the first link you'll see there, WebEx Classroom, will take you into my personal WebEx Classroom. It's where class happens. Students have not been struggling with finding this, but I wanted to have that front and center on their landing page. The next 3 folders, the red, green, and blue folder, those will be folders that each student will use every week. Obviously, the Friday work folder is specific to our asynchronous Fridays. The current unit is, as the name implies, where our current materials are. And then every day they have a warm-up question in that red warm-up question folder, and that's how we start class. The materials at the bottom, below that, the all-purpose Q&A, that is just an all-purpose discussion board, which I don't believe anybody has used yet. The purple folder, you will find some of the start-of-the-year resources, such as syllabi, course expectations, online discussion norms, and so on and so forth. And then below that, I will take any of our previous units materials, change the folder color to white, and just stack them up down there at the bottom of the list. So whenever you need to access materials, it will always be in the green current unit folder. However, those white folders will be useful, for example, when it comes time to study for finals. Now, if I open up these folders, this should be what you see. So I organize things mostly by date. This is optimizing for students who are working synchronously, admittedly. It makes it somewhat difficult in hindsight to go back and remember, oh shoot, what day did we do that assignment that I'm missing, and so on and so forth. But for that reason, I pull the assignments out of the folder. So if you look in the daily warm-up questions folder, you can see they just go in order. Students will always answer the bottommost question on that list, the most recent one being on the 16th of September. Then in the current unit folder, I will set up a folder for each day. And inside of that folder will be a copy of the Google Slide notes, any worksheet problem sets or other resources they need to access, potentially links to external resources, and so on and so forth. However, any homework or submissions I will leave out of that each day folder and place it directly underneath it. And partly that's to help visually separate those folders, and partly that's just to remind you, like, hey, there was homework associated with day 8. It was the speed and velocity problem graph and diagrams. For the Friday work folder, I will typically have the Friday guidelines stay permanent on there, and that is a link to a document as our expectations for what an asynchronous Friday looks like have evolved. Underneath that will be the 2 relevant links for the given Friday. So I'm actually recording this on Friday the 18th. There is a short assessment called Friday 918 attendance check, and I'm basing whether the student was in class off of whether they answer that question. Then, subsequent to that, there's a folder that will contain whatever asynchronous work needs to be done that day. So for today, there was another speed, velocity, position, and displacement worksheet / problem set that had to be completed. And in this case, the submission is inside that folder. Any of the older Friday work, should you have been absent that you need to go find, will then be moved into the folder titled Previous Friday Work. These are those folders that would exist at the bottom half of the Schoology homepage. And again, these materials are less relevant for the student in terms of their day-to-day, but again, I just want to show you that the organization system remains consistent. You know, if you look in the Unit 1 folder, I believe in color coding, so when a folder is no longer relevant to the unit, I will change it from blue to yellow, which is why those are yellowed out. And then if I ever post an answer key, that's what those PDF files are interspersed between those assignments. The assignment icon, by the way, is that blue square with the little pencil diagonally over that bottom right-hand corner. The last thing there is a PDF of how to use Schoology. It's basically just a written description of this setup that I've just been talking about for the last several minutes. So you should have access to this, and if not, I believe you can set up a parent account and just get a hold of your student's counselor in order to do so. So that's about it. Thanks so much for taking your time to watch this video tonight. Hopefully you found it informative and not too boring. Just trust me, I know what it's like to have to stare at a screen for 6 hours a day now. That was not why I signed up for this job. If at any point in time you need to get a hold of me for any reason, just to say hi, if you got ideas about how we can better serve your student, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is my email address, and that's by far the best way to get a hold of me. If for whatever reason email isn't going to be adequate, we can coordinate by email to get in touch some other way, whether that be WebEx or by phone. So again, thanks so much. Be well, stay strong, and let's hope that 2021 has some great things in store for us.